He looked me straight in the eye and said the words I never thought I'd hear after 27 years together. You've become comfortable. Comfortable. That's what I was to him. Not a wife, not a partner, just comfort. And yet, that comfort built his empire. That comfort carried his name. That comfort stood by him when no one else would. But that night in Manhattan, something inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched him walk out, toward the woman half my age, with the same smirk he wore on our wedding day. What he didn't know was that karma was already waiting for him, and when it hit, it didn't knock twice. You're watching Voices of Auntie Ray, where every story hides a truth you won't see coming. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I love seeing how far our stories travel, and if you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you, this story might just hit too close to home. Subscribe before the next twist catches you off guard. It's strange, isn't it? How the worst days of our lives never start like disasters. That morning began like any other in Manhattan. The sound of distant horns, the smell of fresh bagels drifting through our brownstone windows, and the soft rhythm of a life that felt predictable. My name is Lena Hartwell, 52 years old, mother of one, wife of Richard Hartwell, a financial consultant who'd somehow turned every spreadsheet into an empire. We met on a cold February night at Columbia University, two kids chasing ambition, both too broke to afford the cafeteria. He offered me his coffee. I offered him my notebook. 27 years later, that same man couldn't look at me without checking his reflection first. Still, I told myself we were fine. We had the life people dreamed of, the Upper West Side apartment, the gallery openings, the weekend trips to the Hamptons. Everyone saw a power couple. But what they didn't see was how quiet our breakfast had become, or how his phone started living face down on the counter. I remember that morning clearly. The sun hit his side of the table just right, golden, almost cinematic. He was scrolling through emails, pretending not to notice me staring. I wanted to ask, "Are we okay?" But something told me not to, because once you ask that question, you can't take it back. At 8:45 a.m., Richard left for work. Same gray suit, same silk tie. But that day, he forgot something, his briefcase. When I picked it up, something slipped out, a folded receipt from a restaurant I'd never heard of. The Copper Ivy, it said. Downtown. 2 entrees, 1 bottle of Merlot, 1 dessert. Shared. Dated last Thursday. Thursday. The night he told me he had a client dinner. I remember sitting down at the table, holding that receipt like it was evidence in a trial I never agreed to attend. My hands shook. My eyes burned. But my mind? My mind went frighteningly quiet. My best friend, Nora Bennett, called just then. She's the kind of woman who can smell trouble from a mile away. "You sound off," she said. I told her I was fine, the classic lie every married woman perfects over time. "You sure?" she pressed. "You haven't been to yoga in weeks." I told her Richard's been busy lately. "Work never stops," I said. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true, because work emails don't come with lipstick smudges on receipts. That night, he came home late. Again. I waited up, pretending to read. When he finally walked in, he smelled like a different cologne. I asked, "How was your client dinner?" He smiled, a small, rehearsed politician's smile, and said, "You know how these things go." He kissed my forehead and went straight to the shower. I walked to the kitchen window and stared down at the wet streets below. I could see his reflection faintly behind me, through the hallway mirror, blurred by steam, half there, half gone. And I thought, that's our marriage now. Just a reflection, familiar but fading. That's when I noticed something strange on his coat pocket. A silver card, embossed, expensive, with just 2 words. The Orchid Room. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But I would soon learn that the Orchid Room wasn't a restaurant. It was a secret he'd been keeping for months. They used to call us the golden couple. We had the look, the smiles, the kind of chemistry that made other people believe in forever. At dinner parties, Richard would tell stories. Charming, practiced, always ending with laughter. And I'd watch women lean in closer, hanging on to every word. I used to be proud of that. Proud that he was mine. But love, I've learned, doesn't rot in one moment. It decays slowly, quietly, like a house that still looks perfect from the outside, but the wood beneath the paint is already hollow. We met our friends for brunch that weekend. Nora was there, of course, sharp-eyed as ever. She kept glancing between us, like she was waiting for me to say something. "You've been quiet lately," she said. I smiled. The kind of smile women wear when they're protecting something they can't explain. "Just tired," I said. Across the table, Richard was on his phone again. He didn't even look up when the waiter asked about coffee refills. And when I reached for his hand, he pulled away, casually, like it meant nothing. But it did. God, it did. Later that night, I was scrolling through social media. Someone had tagged us in a photo from brunch. We looked perfect. Matching smiles, his arm around my shoulder, my hand resting on his chest. I stared at that picture for a long time, because that version of us didn't exist anymore. It was a ghost. A photograph of strangers pretending to still be in love. That's when I started looking closer. The late nights, the sudden gym memberships, the new cologne. He even changed his passwords, the man who once gave me the PIN to his first debit card. I used to think trust was built once, and it stayed. Now I know. Trust needs to be fed, watered, and guarded like a living thing. And ours was starving. Sometimes I still remember our wedding day. I can see the way the light hit the stained glass when I walked down that aisle. He couldn't take his eyes off me. And when he said, "I will never hurt you," everyone clapped. Everyone except me. Because deep inside, a small voice whispered, "People change." I ignored it then. I was 25. I thought love was enough to keep a man faithful. If I had known what was waiting for me decades later, I might have run. Or maybe I wouldn't. Because love makes you foolish. And I was foolish enough to believe him every time he said, "You're all I'll ever need." It happened 3 days after the receipt. I was folding laundry when his phone buzzed on the counter. The name that flashed across the screen made my stomach twist. The Orchid Room. It wasn't a contact. It was a chat group. I told myself not to look, that I was better than snooping, but betrayal has a way of pulling your hand before your heart catches up. There were only 2 messages. The first said, "Friday night, same suite." The second was from him. "I'll bring the same wine." I froze. My throat tightened. That was the moment everything shifted. The air felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. I wasn't even angry yet, just numb. Because when you see proof, real proof, your body doesn't know how to react. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I smiled through dinner, laughed at his stories, even kissed him goodnight. But my mind was already somewhere else. Planning, remembering, connecting dots. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called in sick, put on a coat, and took a cab downtown. The Copper Ivy was smaller than I expected. Dim lights, expensive wine, white roses on every table. The hostess looked at me politely and asked if I had a reservation. I said no. But when I mentioned Richard's name, she hesitated. Then she smiled, the way people do when they recognize someone, and said, "Oh, Mr. Hartwell, he's one of our best patrons." That was all I needed to hear. I turned and walked out, but my hands were shaking. Not from heartbreak this time. From something darker. Because now, I didn't want answers. I wanted truth. And truth, I've learned, never shows up uninvited. Friday night came faster than I expected. He left home early, said it was a networking dinner with the board. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and wished him luck. Then I waited exactly 13 minutes before following him. I remember the way my fingers trembled on the steering wheel. The wipers barely kept up with the storm. I wasn't sure what I was doing, or why I was still doing it. But sometimes, the only way to silence suspicion is to watch it unravel with your own eyes. He drove straight to the Orchid Hotel, the same one from that message thread, Midtown, just off 5th Avenue. I parked across the street, behind a delivery van, and watched him hand his keys to the valet like a man who had nothing to hide. When he disappeared through those glass doors, something inside me shifted. It wasn't pain anymore. It was purpose. I walked in 15 minutes later, pretending to check my phone. The concierge smiled politely, asked if I needed help. I told him I was meeting my husband for our anniversary dinner, that he'd reserved the private suite under Hartwell. The lie came out smoother than I expected. He checked the screen, smiled again, and said, "Ah yes, Mr. Hartwell, Suite 704. He checked in about 20 minutes ago." My pulse skipped. I thanked him, stepped into the elevator, and pressed 7. The ride up felt like an eternity. Mirrors on every side, my reflection looking back at me like a stranger. I could hear my own breathing echo. My hands gripped my purse so tight the leather creaked. The hallway smelled like lilies. Every door looked identical. Black number plates, golden knobs, silence. Until I reached 704. For a moment, I just stood there. My hand hovered above the door. I could hear faint laughter inside. His voice, lower than usual, smooth. And then, a woman's. I froze. I could have turned back, pretended I hadn't heard, saved myself from the image that would burn itself into my memory. But I didn't, because after 27 years of loyalty, I deserved the truth. The door wasn't locked, just barely closed. I pushed it open, slow, steady, and saw him. Richard. Shirt half-buttoned, wine glasses on the table, candles flickering like they were mocking me. And then, I saw her. She wasn't what I expected. She wasn't young and glamorous. She was familiar. It took me a second to place her face. Then it hit me like a car crash. It was Amanda, our son's fiancée. The world tilted. My knees went weak. My mind went blank except for one thought. This can't be real. But it was. Her lipstick was still on his collar. Her shoes, the same ones I'd gifted her for Christmas, were by the bed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there watching the two people I loved most look back at me. One with guilt, the other with something colder. He said my name first. Marianne. She didn't even try to hide. She just crossed her arms and whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." The words hit harder than any confession could. I stepped back, whispered, "How long?" He said nothing. She smiled. A year. A year. My son's fiancée had been sleeping with my husband for a year. Something inside me broke. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. "Wait, please," he said. "It's not what you think." I laughed. I don't even remember meaning to. It just came out, sharp and hollow. "Oh, it's exactly what I think, Richard." Then Amanda spoke again, soft, steady. "He's going to tell him, your son. He's ending it tonight." I looked at her. "You think that makes it better?" She looked away, and that's when I saw the envelope on the table, with my name written on it. I took it, walked out, didn't say another word. I didn't even cry until I reached the elevator, when the doors closed and I could finally collapse in private. When I opened the envelope later that night, it wasn't a letter, it was a contract. My husband's company, Hartwell Financial, had quietly removed me from the board. My name, my shares, my legacy. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was a setup. If you think the worst part was catching them together, you're wrong. The real betrayal hadn't even started yet, and when I discovered what they'd done, I stopped being the victim. I didn't sleep that night. The rain had stopped around 3, but inside my head, it was still pouring. I kept replaying the moment, the look in his eyes when I opened that door. Not fear, not guilt. Calculation. When you've lived with someone for 27 years, you learn the little things. The twitch of a jaw. The way silence means more than words. And that night, his silence told me everything. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, something I hadn't done in years, and opened my laptop. I logged into the joint account, just like I always did on the first of the month. Only this time, it didn't open. Access denied. I tried again. Same message. Then I checked my email, or rather, our business email. Password changed. Signature revoked. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't emotional. It was corporate. By Monday morning, I was in the office of our family attorney, Thomas Avery, downtown Manhattan. He'd been with us for 15 years. I thought if anyone could help me, it was him. But when he saw me, he looked nervous. He closed the blinds before he spoke. "Marianne, I wasn't expecting you." His tone told me everything I didn't want to hear. He pulled a folder from his drawer and slid it across the desk. I opened it, and my breath caught. Power of attorney transfer. Richard's signature. Amanda's as a witness. My signature. Forged. They hadn't just taken my shares, they'd taken my identity. Thomas leaned in. "Marianne, listen to me carefully. I can't be seen helping you. They've threatened to pull every client I have if I talk." My hands clenched around the folder. "So you're telling me my husband is blackmailing you?" He didn't answer, just looked at the floor. When I left the office, I realized the city felt different, colder, like every glass building was watching me fall apart. I stopped at a small cafe near Madison Avenue, ordered black coffee, no sugar. That's when a woman approached my table. Mid-30s, dark curls, brown coat, kind eyes. "You're Mrs. Hartwell, aren't you?" she asked. I nodded, warily. "My name's Valerie. I used to work for your husband's company." She glanced around before whispering, "He's been doing this for years, ma'am. You're not the first." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "The younger women," she said. "He sets them up, uses them to get leverage, sign off documents, open new accounts, and when it's over, he walks away richer, and they walk away ruined." That was the moment I felt my stomach drop. Amanda wasn't just the affair, she was the accomplice. By sunset, I was back home, sitting at the kitchen island where we'd once laughed over burnt pancakes and wine. The place felt sterile now, his chair still pulled out, his mug still on the counter, half empty. That's when I picked up my phone and called our son, Ethan. "Hey, Mom," he said, casual, cheerful. I hesitated. "Sweetheart, have you talked to Amanda lately?" "Yeah, she's been weird lately. Says she's planning something big for Dad's birthday." I froze. "For Dad's birthday?" "Yeah, didn't he tell you? She's organizing something at the Orchid." "The Orchid? The same hotel." I forced a smile into my voice. "That sounds lovely, honey. I'll see you soon." Then I hung up and exhaled the last bit of fear I had left. That was the moment I stopped being the victim. If he wanted to play dirty, he'd forgotten who taught him the game. I stood in front of our mirror that night. My reflection looked like a ghost of the woman who'd once believed in forever. But ghosts can haunt. And I promised myself, before sunrise, he'd learn what happens when you build your empire on deceit. What he didn't know was that the woman he'd discarded still had access to everything he thought he'd taken, including his most dangerous secret. The next morning, I was done crying, done waiting, done playing the role of the silent, loyal wife. I woke up before dawn, brewed a pot of black coffee, and sat at my desk with one goal: find out exactly what he was hiding. I still had an old hard drive from our first office, one he'd forgotten existed. It had every quarterly report, every client file, every internal memo from the last decade. He used to call it the skeleton folder. Now I knew why. It took hours. Buried beneath fake invoices and coded files, I found something strange. A folder labeled Hartwell Foundation, Private. Inside, a series of offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, Panama, Zurich, and one entry that froze me. A transfer, $500,000, to a name I didn't recognize, Valerie Kim. The same woman who'd approached me at the cafe. I called her immediately. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Still nothing. Then a text came through. "Don't call again. He's watching me." My blood ran cold. If Valerie was part of his pattern, then she knew something he couldn't afford to let out. I drove to our old office space on 38th Street. It was supposed to be empty, but the lights on the third floor were still on. Inside, dust floated through the air like ghosts of old deals. I followed the hum of a running server, tucked behind a false panel, password protected. His favorite passphrase, Orchid 27, the same hotel where Amanda planned his birthday. The system opened, and what I saw made my hands tremble. Dozens of profiles, each one a woman, each one listed by age, address, occupation, and next to each name, an exit date. Valerie, Amanda. Others I'd never met. He'd been doing this long before he met Amanda, setting up women as business fronts, draining their assets, and vanishing before anyone could connect the dots. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a system. I froze. 3 sharp knocks. My heart raced. Had he followed me? Did he know I'd found it? But it wasn't him. It was Valerie. She looked different. Pale, shaken, like someone who'd seen too much. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If he knows, he'll—" I cut her off. "He already knows I'm alive, Valerie. I'm not hiding anymore." Her eyes darted to the open server screen. "Oh my God, you found it." She stepped closer, trembling. "Marianne, that list, those are the ones he destroyed. Every woman there lost something. Their money, their homes, their reputations, and one of them never made it out alive." That line hit me like a blade. "Who?" I asked. Valerie's voice cracked. Her name was Lila Rowe, his first wife. The room felt colder. He'd told me his first marriage ended in a car accident. But now, I wasn't so sure. Valerie leaned closer. "He's planning something again. The Orchid event. It's not a celebration. It's a cover." "For what?" I asked. "A new transfer. A new name. Amanda's just the next pawn." That's when the idea came to me, sharp and dangerous as broken glass. If he was going to the Orchid to move his money, then that's exactly where I'd make him face his karma. I had everything I needed. The files, the names, the evidence. But I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. Because karma works better when you let it see itself fall. That night, the Orchid Hotel gleamed like sin dressed in gold. Every corner smelled of money and guilt. My husband, Gregory Hartwell, stood at the center of it all, sharp tuxedo, champagne in hand, pretending to be the man everyone admired. I watched him from across the ballroom, half hidden behind a marble pillar. Amanda was there too, radiant and naive, the new Mrs. Hartwell in her glittering gown. She had no idea that the man she called her savior had once called me his miracle. My heart pounded, not with jealousy, but with purpose. I wasn't there to confront him. I was there to end his game. Valerie had done her part, in her hands, a hidden recorder, synced to the servers I'd accessed earlier. Every conversation in that room would stream to a private cloud, time-stamped and unerasable. All I had to do was make him confess. I approached his assistant first. I told her the catering team had a question about the Orchid account. The phrase alone made her blink. She stammered. Said she'd fetch Gregory right away. When he saw me, his expression cracked. Surprise, then panic, then that rehearsed smile. "Marianne," he said, voice smooth as silk. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should your ghosts," I replied. We walked toward the balcony, his hand firm on my arm, pretending to be a gentleman. The crowd watched us go, assuming it was old lovers rekindling a memory. If only they knew. Under the chandelier light, his mask slipped. "You couldn't just move on, could you?" he hissed. "After everything I gave you." "You gave me lies," I said. "And you gave Valerie fear. And Lila, her life." His pupils narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain the accounts, the orchid transfers, the women you used." He took a step closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Do you have any idea what you're walking into, Marianne? You think I did all this alone?" That's when I realized he wasn't just protecting himself. There was someone above him. Before I could press further, a new voice cut through the air. Cold, familiar. "She knows too much." I turned. Amanda stood behind him. Her smile, gone. Amanda's eyes were wet, not with tears, but rage. "You think you're the only one he fooled?" she said. "I was part of it, until he cut me out. But now, you'll both pay." She pulled a small pistol from her purse. I froze. The crowd inside kept dancing, oblivious to the storm building just a few steps away. Valerie, watching from the security room, saw everything on the monitor. She called my phone. I ignored it. My eyes were on Gregory, who raised his hands slowly. "Amanda, let's talk about this." "Talk?" she sneered. "You said I'd be your partner. You made me your pawn." And just then, karma showed its face. Amanda stepped back, heels slipping on the slick marble. The gun went off, one shot, then silence. Gregory staggered forward, clutching his shoulder. Amanda fell to the ground, sobbing, and I just stood there numb. The police came. The guests panicked. Amanda was taken away, screaming his name. Gregory survived, but his empire? Gone by dawn. The recordings Valerie captured were all over the news within hours. The hidden accounts, the women, the fraud, it all came out. I didn't speak to him again. I didn't need to, because karma had already finished the conversation. Months later, I walked by the Hudson River, the same path where we used to dream about forever. I wasn't angry anymore, just awake. Valerie opened a nonprofit for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. We named it Orchid 27, a reminder that beauty can grow even from rot. And as the sun rose, I whispered something to the wind. "You were right, Karma. You don't wait. You walk." 3 months passed before I heard from Gregory again. The headlines had faded. The cameras were gone. But shame has a longer half-life than fame. The letter arrived in a matte black envelope, no return address. Inside was one line: "For closure, meet me where it began." And a check for $500,000. $500,000, not as an apology, but as silence money. The pier was empty that morning, except for one figure in a gray coat. Gregory, paler, thinner, slower, like a man who'd spent the last few months bargaining with ghosts. "You came," he said quietly. "I didn't think you would." "You shouldn't have thought at all," I replied. "That's what got you here." He looked away, out over the river. "I can make things right, Marianne. I have contacts. I still have power. You don't have to keep fighting." I laughed, not cruelly, just truthfully. "Power?" I said. "You think money is power? Gregory, you lost that the moment you lost your name." He turned toward me, his voice trembling now. "They're watching me, Marianne. The investors, the partners. They're not who you think they are. They want it all gone. The footage, the files, the proof. If I don't shut you up, they'll come for both of us. That's when I realized this wasn't about ego anymore. It was survival. But whose? He handed me a thick folder. Inside, legal agreements, offshore bank details, corporate transfers. Everything Valerie had risked her life to uncover. Sign these, he said. And the money's yours. You'll never hear from them again. Them? I asked. Who are you protecting, Gregory? He hesitated, eyes darting. You don't want to know. Try me. He looked at me for a long time, then whispered one name, and it wasn't Amanda. It wasn't any investor. It was someone far closer to home. Valerie. He smiled sadly. She wasn't just your friend, Marianne. She was mine too, long before you knew her. My throat tightened. You're lying. Am I? Who do you think helped me build the Orchid accounts? Who made the transfers? She wasn't just helping you expose me. She was erasing herself. The pieces started falling apart in my mind. Valerie, the one person I trusted to the end, had access to everything. She'd known where the files were, when to leak them, and exactly how to vanish when it was over. Gregory leaned closer. She set us both up, Marianne. You think I'm the monster. She's the storm. I didn't want to believe him. But deep down, something in me cracked open, because part of me had seen it coming. I left the pier in silence, the check still in my hand, the folder on the seat beside me. I didn't know what to feel, victory or fear, but I knew one thing. Valerie wasn't answering her phone. Voicemail, again. Then, just as I was about to hang up, a message popped on my screen. No name, just coordinates, and 3 words. Don't trust anyone. That's when I realized this story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The coordinates led to a street I hadn't walked in years. Summer Street, Boston. It was where Valerie once said she learned how to disappear. At the time, I thought it was just her poetic way of describing heartbreak. Now I realized it might have been a warning. It was the kind of building people walked past without ever noticing. No name on the buzzer, no mailboxes. Just one faint smell of coffee and bleach. Apartment 3C. The door was slightly open. Inside, everything was still. No furniture, no clothes, no photos. Just one thing taped to the wall. A manila envelope with my name scrawled across it in blue ink. My hands were shaking as I tore it open. Inside, a flash drive, and a handwritten note. If you're reading this, they already found me. The flash drive contained dozens of documents, receipts, offshore ledgers, hotel bills, coded emails, and one recurring transaction name, Project Dawnlight. You shouldn't have gone there, a voice said. Male, calm, controlled. She wanted you to stay out of it. Who is this? I asked. Let's just say Valerie wasn't who you thought she was, and neither is Gregory. What do you mean? You'll see soon enough. But if you value your life, leave Boston tonight. For a moment I sat frozen. The phone slipped from my hand. Because the voice wasn't unfamiliar. I'd heard it before, in my own home. It was Gregory's lawyer, David Rains, the same man who'd handled our estate, our investments, our prenup. And he wasn't just protecting Gregory. He was protecting something bigger. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Files began unfolding. Names, codes, cities. Project Dawnlight wasn't a company. It was a network. A shell corporation built by Gregory, funded through charities, fake accounts, and properties registered under other people's names. One of them, Valerie's. Every document pointed to a string of accounts in the Cayman Islands, each one tied to another woman's name. He'd been using women like me, wives, partners, investors, as front identities to launder millions. And Valerie? She was his fixer, until she decided she wanted out. That's when the accidents began. 5 women, all former partners, all written off as car wrecks, overdoses, or falls, all connected to Gregory's empire. And now Valerie had vanished too. I checked into a small motel near the harbor, the kind of place no one asks for ID if you pay in cash. I needed to think, to breathe. But before dawn there was a knock on my door. "Marianne, it's me." My heart stopped. That voice, I'd know it anywhere. I opened the door, and there she was, Valerie, alive. She looked exhausted, her hair tangled, clothes damp from rain, eyes red and wild. "We don't have much time," she said. "They traced the drive. They know you have it." "Who?" I asked. "The ones Gregory worked for. He wasn't the mastermind, Marianne. He was just the face." I wanted to ask 100 questions, but she grabbed my wrist. "Listen, whatever happens, don't go back to New York. Don't trust David. And whatever you do, don't open folder 7. Then she slipped something into my coat pocket, a small black key card, and walked away into the night. That was the last time I ever saw her alive. By morning, Valerie was found floating near the docks. Police called it a suicide, but the message in her handwriting said otherwise. "They know you're next." I told myself I wouldn't open it. Valerie's words kept echoing in my head. "Whatever you do, don't open folder 7. But the human heart has a strange relationship with curiosity. It beats faster, the closer you get to danger. The screen flickered. Then it appeared. Folder 7. Dawnlight, restricted. I hovered over it for a full minute before double-clicking. The folder opened, and the first file name froze my breath. Subject, Marianne L. Carter, Phase 2. It was a dossier. On me, my photos, my medical records, my signature, every private conversation I'd ever had with Gregory, transcribed, even my late mother's will, was there. And at the bottom, a timeline. Phase 1, integration, 1998-2005. Phase 2, diversion, 2005 to 2012. Phase 3, extraction, 2012, present. Each phase lined up perfectly with milestones in our marriage. Our first house purchase, the company merger, my sudden diagnosis with insomnia, which, I now realized, had started right after Gregory insisted we hire a new nutritionist. Valerie. It wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just betrayal. I was part of an experiment. Folder 7 wasn't about money laundering. It was behavioral data, tracking responses, emotional breakdowns, recovery timelines. Gregory had turned our marriage into a psychological control study, and the funding came from a biotech firm in Washington, Halcyon Dynamics. According to the files, Gregory's job was to test how emotional trauma could be induced and managed for compliance enhancement. His reward, full partnership in the parent company, disguised as a real estate investment firm. In short, I wasn't his wife. I was his test subject. And Valerie? She'd been one of the researchers who fell in love with me. That's why she ran. The phone rang again. Same unlisted number. I picked it up, but this time I didn't say a word. A man's voice whispered, "You shouldn't have opened it, Mrs. Carter. The extraction team's already en route." Extraction team. The phrase hit me like a gunshot. I ran to the window. Black SUVs idling across the street. 2 figures in coats, not moving. Just watching. That's when I remembered the key card Valerie gave me. Small, black, unmarked. And on the back, a single number, 19. Storage facility off Harbor Avenue. Unit 19. The key card slid in. Light turned green. Inside, rows of sealed boxes, labeled only with numbers, and 1 black duffel bag sitting on top. Inside were passports, 10 of them. Each one with Gregory's face, but a different name, different countries, different lives. Gregory wasn't in New York anymore. He'd been cycling through identities, collecting women, building false businesses, then vanishing. I wasn't the first Marianne. I was just iteration 9. And if the pattern was right, iteration 10 was already waiting. I boarded the midnight train back to New York. I knew it was dangerous, but something inside me needed to face him, not as a victim, but as a witness. I wasn't running anymore. As the skyline appeared through the fog, I whispered to myself, "You wanted someone younger, Gregory. But karma has my name on it." What I didn't know was that he already knew I was coming. When I left New York, I promised myself I'd never go back unless I had a reason. That reason came wrapped in a plain manila envelope. No return address, no note. Inside was a photograph. Gregory, standing on the balcony of a penthouse overlooking Central Park. With her. The same girl who destroyed 27 years of marriage. But what caught my eye wasn't them. It was the logo etched into the glass behind them. G. Anders Co. Gregory's old company. The one he told me was bankrupt. Only it wasn't bankrupt. It was reborn. And it bore his name. Alone. As I walked through Terminal 4, the city felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it wasn't the air. Maybe it was me. Every memory here was a ghost. The cafe where we had our first date. The hotel where he proposed. Even the skyline looked different. Newer, taller, more arrogant. Just like him. The driver asked where to. I said, Fifth Avenue. The Anders penthouse. He looked at me through the mirror and muttered, "You sure about that, ma'am? Lot of drama up there lately." I smiled. That's exactly why I'm going. The door opened before I could knock. Gregory stood there, older, heavier, but his eyes still had that glint of entitlement. Behind him, the girl, Sienna. Barefoot, wearing his robe, smirking like she'd won a prize. I didn't flinch. I just said, "You left your ghosts unfinished, Gregory. I came to collect them." Gregory. "Marianne? You shouldn't be here." Marianne. "Neither should your lies, yet here we are." Every inch of that place screamed power, but the kind built on deceit. I noticed a safe slightly ajar behind his desk, folders stacked neatly. One label caught my attention. The Berkshire account. Gregory tried to block my view, but it was too late. I pulled the folder free. Inside were offshore documents, fake ownership records, and one name repeated across multiple companies. Eleanor Shaw. The name meant nothing at first, until I flipped the last page and saw a photo. It was me, my signature, my maiden name, my social security number. Gregory had built his empire, under my identity. Marianne. Whisper. "You used me." Gregory. "You wouldn't have understood. You were too sentimental. You wanted marriage. I wanted legacy." Marianne. "Then consider this your legacy, Gregory, built on fraud and fire." She tosses the folder onto the fireplace. Flames begin to rise. Sienna, screaming, "You're crazy!" Marianne coldly. "Not yet." I told him the truth then, the part he never saw coming. The photo in the envelope, it wasn't from a stranger. It was from someone he trusted. His financial director, Daniel Price, the same man he fired to impress Sienna. As Gregory shouted, I turned my phone toward him, still recording, every confession, every justification, every cruel word. And I smiled, because this time, his empire wouldn't collapse quietly. Gregory. "You think anyone will believe you?" Marianne. "They won't have to. They'll see you." He whispered, "It's bigger than him, Marianne. You have no idea what you've started." Daniel Price. I hadn't heard that name in almost 10 years. The last time I did, Gregory told me he'd been caught embezzling funds, that he nearly destroyed the company. But standing there in the elevator's reflection, his eyes didn't look like guilt. They looked like someone who'd seen too much. He motioned me to follow. Against every rational thought, I did. "You shouldn't have burned those files, Marianne. That wasn't just Gregory's empire. That was the cover story for something much larger. I don't understand. He stole my name, my life. What else could there be? He didn't just use your name for business. He used it for laundering. Laundering for who? A group called the Berkshire Circle. Real estate moguls, politicians, investors. The kind of men who donate at charity galas by night and move millions through shell companies by day. Gregory was their face. You were their shadow. In that moment, the fire in the penthouse didn't feel like justice anymore. It felt like the start of something I couldn't control. Everything you need to expose them is on this. But if you open it, they'll know, and they won't stop. Then why give it to me? Because I'm already marked. I needed someone who still has a name they trust. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but before I could, headlights flared at the far end of the garage. 2 black SUVs rolled in. No license plates. Daniel's face went pale. Run. By the time I reached the stairwell, Daniel was gone. Only the flash drive remained, warm in my hand. I needed someone who could help me without questions. Someone smart, fearless, and disconnected from Gregory's circle. That's when I remembered Samantha Reeves, an investigative journalist I'd met years ago when she was covering Gregory's philanthropy events. You vanished after the divorce, Marianne. Now you show up asking about offshores and laundering? You sure you want to open that door? The door's already open. I just need to know what's behind it. These documents? Oh my God. Marianne, these aren't business filings. They're federal accounts, government-linked. You realize this could destroy people. Good. For 27 years, Gregory taught me to stay quiet. But now, silence had a price, and I wasn't the one paying it anymore. The files opened into encrypted folders. Samantha guided me through. Inside, names, transactions, offshore accounts, wire transfers, and a pattern. Every major transfer, every hidden company, all linked back to one address, the Berkshire Trust, 480 Madison Avenue. It was Gregory's old office building. He never left the company. He just rebuilt it under another name. Email subject: We need to talk. Alone. DP. Daniel? Daniel wasn't nervous. He was calm. Too calm. He slid a newspaper across the table. The headline read, Finance Director Found Dead in Manhattan Garage Fire. Daniel, this says you're dead. I told you, Marianne. They don't stop. Who are you? Let's just say, I'm the man your husband was working for. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The man sitting across from me, the one who had warned me, saved me, now claimed to be the employer of the man who'd ruined my life. You're lying. Am I? Or did Gregory tell you everything you wanted to hear? He said you betrayed him, that you stole money from the company. And you believed that? He told you half a story. I wasn't stealing from him. I was siphoning from them. The Berkshire Circle. Gregory caught me before I could finish. But instead of turning me in, he made me disappear. He faked my death to save his own. I became his ghost, the man behind the curtain, the name no one could trace. He spread files across the table. Dozens of folders, hundreds of names, senators, bankers, developers, all linked by the same signature transfers. And every signature had one thing in common, my forged name at the bottom. He used me to move their money. Exactly. Because who would question the wife, the loyal, elegant, silent partner? You were his shield, Marianne. Then why tell me now? Why not bury it like the rest? Because Gregory's gone rogue. He's not sending their money anymore. He's keeping it. The circle wants him erased. But they can't find him without you. So that's why you came to me. Not to help me, to use me again. No, to give you leverage. If you expose him, you'll destroy them all. And if I don't? Then they'll destroy you. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window watching headlights smear across wet glass. I kept asking myself the same question. How many years of my life had been built on a lie? 27 years with Gregory. 27 years of Sunday brunches, board meetings, anniversaries. All while I was the paper ghost funding his empire. At 3:14 a.m., a new message appeared on my encrypted email. No subject, no signature. Just 6 words. You're asking questions you shouldn't, Marianne. That's when I knew. The circle already knew I was alive, and they were watching. Samantha called me early. She'd been digging deeper into the Berkshire Circle files. Her voice was trembling. Marianne, I traced the shell companies. One of them is registered under your maiden name, in Delaware. It was created 2 days ago. That's impossible. I don't have access to those accounts. I think someone's framing you. Gregory, maybe even Daniel. Then it's a setup. Meet me at the Tribune office. I'll show you everything. But when I got there, she wasn't at her desk. Her phone was dead. And the file she'd been working on? Gone. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was the bait. You lied to me. You think this is about lies? It's about survival. The circle doesn't forgive betrayal, Marianne. Gregory learned that. Now it's your turn. You wanted me to find you, to lead them here. And now you have. What did you do? What I had to. You and I are the same, ghosts built from someone else's story. He disappeared into the storm that night, swallowed by the skyline. And I finally understood. Gregory wasn't my biggest enemy. The man who had saved me was now my executioner. Mrs. Hayes, if you want to live, don't trust anyone named Daniel. Your husband's still alive. For weeks, I had mourned him. Gregory Hayes, husband, partner, betrayer, found dead in a fiery crash on the Hudson Parkway. I'd stood at that funeral in black, watched his coffin lowered, heard the words, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But the call last night shattered that illusion. My husband wasn't buried. He was hiding. The cemetery was still wet from rain, the ground soft beneath my boots. I'd come alone, or so I thought. His grave marker stood just as I remembered. Gregory A. Hayes, beloved husband, visionary leader, 1966-2023. But the earth above the coffin was disturbed. No. The caretaker told me something that made my blood run cold. Couple of nights ago, some fellas came through, said they were from the city morgue, claimed they needed to confirm a dental record. They left before sunrise. We haven't seen the coffin since. He was gone. Gregory's body, gone. Which meant only one thing. He'd never died at all. I went back to my room and threw my phone onto the bed. One new message blinked on the screen. An email from an encrypted sender. The subject line was chillingly familiar. For better, for worse. Marianne, you shouldn't have gone to the police. You've made things harder for both of us. The circle knows you're alive. They'll come for you next, but I can still protect you. Meet me where it all began. Midnight. Don't bring anyone. Where it all began. That could only mean one place. The brownstone on 58th Street. Our first home. The one we'd sold years ago. He wanted me to come alone. But I wasn't the same woman who used to obey his voice. The house looked lifeless. The paint peeled. Windows dark. But the front door was slightly ajar, as if someone had been waiting. Inside, the air smelled like dust and lavender. And there, in the faint glow of the hallway lamp, I saw him. You look well, Marianne. Better than I expected. You're alive. Death is a matter of paperwork, and I've always been good with paperwork. Why fake your death? Because the circle wanted me gone, and I don't enjoy being erased. You used me. You built your empire on my name. We built it, Marianne. You just didn't realize how high the walls were. They're coming for both of us now. Then maybe we run, together, one last time. After everything? You think I'd run with you? I think you still love me. That's why you came. It wasn't a gun. It was a recorder. You just confessed to everything. You always underestimated me. You're recording me, too. Always symmetrical, darling. Always equal. But here's what you don't know. The circle isn't after us. They're with us. He led me downstairs. Rows of screens displayed faces, politicians, CEOs, even judges. Each file marked with a timestamp and an encrypted symbol. It wasn't the circle controlling Gregory. He was the circle. You built this. Correction, we did. The day you signed our joint trust, you became half owner of everything. That means, Marianne, if I fall, you fall too. Then maybe it's time we both burn. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've just leveled the playing field. I ran until my lungs burned, until I couldn't hear his voice behind me anymore. But as the sirens faded, one truth lingered. Gregory Hayes wasn't dead. He'd simply become something worse, untouchable. You've started a war you can't win. G. By the time the morning sun hit the East River, New York had already begun whispering. Gregory Vance, the golden boy of Wall Street, had been found unresponsive in his own penthouse. No forced entry, no struggle, just silence. The media called it an unfortunate accident. The police, a heart condition. But those who knew him, those who knew what he'd done, whispered something else entirely. Karma. Marianne didn't attend the funeral. She didn't need to. She'd already buried him long ago. On that stormy night he'd chosen youth over loyalty. But still, she watched from across the street, behind dark glasses, the rain tracing her face like invisible tears. As the coffin lowered, she whispered a single line. I hope you found what you were chasing. But karma, it doesn't stop when one chapter closes. It lingers. It tests. It asks, what kind of justice do you really want? Because that very night, Marianne received a message, a private email, time-stamped an hour before Gregory's death. Subject line, you were right. No signature. No sender name. Just an attachment. A document titled Vance Legacy Fund. Inside was a legal directive, transferring all of Gregory's remaining assets. Every hidden account, every property, every offshore trust, to one person. Her. Some said it was his final act of guilt. Others said it was his last manipulation, a way to tether her soul to his forever. Marianne never cashed a cent. She donated it all, every dollar, to a foundation for women starting over after betrayal. She called it the Phoenix Fund. But even now, years later, people still talk about that woman from New York, the one who vanished after karma came calling. Some say they've seen her walking through Central Park at dawn, always wearing the same red scarf, always looking toward the skyline as if waiting for something or someone. Maybe justice, maybe peace, maybe both. When I tell you this story, I don't tell it to make you pity Marianne. I tell it because betrayal never ends with a breakup. It ends with awakening. And sometimes, that awakening comes wrapped in the ashes of karma. So, if you've ever loved someone who made you feel invisible, if you've ever built their dreams while they built your heartbreak, tell me in the comments, what does karma owe you? Subscribe before the next twist finds you unprepared. And remember, sometimes the quietest revenge is living beautifully. When the city sleeps, secrets don't. They linger, behind penthouse walls, beneath champagne toasts, inside wedding rings that no longer shine. Marianne's story isn't rare. It's just one the world tries to forget. But every time betrayal breathes, karma listens and waits. Next, we'll uncover another story, one that begins with a smile at a family dinner and ends with a confession no one was supposed to hear. You won't believe who said it. If you felt this story tonight, if you saw yourself somewhere in it, don't just leave. Stay. Subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Because somewhere, someone else is watching too, living the same heartbreak, waiting for their own justice.